Hello and welcome to the Local Leaders Podcast. I'm your host, Jeff Johnson. The Local Leaders Podcast provides a platform for successful business owners to share their stories, their experiences, their advice, and their ideas in order to help our listeners achieve more success in their business and in their lives. Get ready, another great show is coming up. Hey, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Local Leaders Podcast. I'm your host, Jeff Johnson, and I am super excited today to be able to introduce Paige Vidrine. Welcome, Paige. Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me, Jeff.
We are, like I said, super excited to have you here, coming from the great state of Louisiana. And, they've had some challenges down that way. And Paige owns Buffi's Peauxboys in Lake Charles, Louisiana. We're excited to learn more about Buffi's and your experience, your story, and all that. So with that, I'll just kind of turn it over to you, Paige, and ask you to tell us all about Buffi's Peauxboys.
Yeah. So Buffi's Peauxboys is 8 years old. My sister Buffi bought a small Peauxboy shop in a shopping center that was hidden. And she put her recipes in it, and they're delicious sandwiches, and the only issue was that Buffi had a disabled child. And the thing with the restaurant industry is that you really have to live there in order for it to be successful long-term. So it was successful in its own right because, the food was amazing and she built quite a following. But at a certain point, she needed to walk away. So we were going to close the business, sell everything. It was tough for her with her disabled child, and she was getting ill herself. So I said to my mom, she said, we're going to sell it or we're going to close the doors. I said, let me see what I can do. I had experience in marketing. I had a daycare just a few years before that I had made successful. And then I was working with other companies, and I was in real estate doing marketing with another realtor. And so I said, let me try. Let me just see what I can do. So I took it over. And overnight, with the marketing things that I was doing and in the ways that I changed up the business model, we started becoming profitable. Now, I spent 3 months straight in the business. I never left. Sacrificed a lot because I have 2 young children. So I had gotten some help with a friend of mine who just was really supportive with helping me with the kiddos. And I lived in the business until it was successful. And we did well on that side of town for a while. I knew that we wanted to expand because it was just, we were busting out the seams. It was such a small kitchen and there were boxes we didn't know where to put. So I was storing things, dry goods in my catering supplies in my minivan out front because we had nowhere to put anything. We were growing so fast. So a place on a busy street in Lake Charles had come up for rent. We said, okay, well, let's try that. So got into that situation on Ryan Street and it blew up. I didn't expect the overwhelming support. It had a drive-through, so we got super busy. And there was a point where I had to decide, do I have 2 restaurants and spread myself thin, or do we just consolidate and just keep pumping out the growth in this one bigger restaurant? And there were a lot of factors that played into that decision that I made to close the first location. One was it was in a neighborhood that was getting broken into constantly. So, I had gotten PTSD, no kidding. On Sunday mornings, I would end up waking up, checking my phone to see if I was broken into because there was Sunday after Sunday after Sunday, window was busted in. And even if they're not getting anything, it's just they're trying to get something. And so I said, forget about it. This is just a sign. It's time for us to move forward. So we moved forward into this bigger location. I ended up hiring someone who had come in. Her name's Katie Lejeune. She had come in and she was like, I just want to cook. All I need to do is make $250 a week. And that's I don't want to do anything else. I have been in corporate for 15 some odd years or more, and I'm just tired of getting looked over. I'm tired of working so hard for nothing. Like, she was done with corporate and being a general manager anywhere. So she was like,
Yeah.
I'm throwing my hands up, just pay me what you got, I'm gonna cook. So I hired her, and quickly she started to be a leader. I mean, she couldn't hold back, right? Like, she saw things that weren't working. So she's like, Paige, we need to change this. I'm like, well, do you want to be a manager? Like, do you want to run the business? And she did. She stepped up. She is now my business partner. It's been she started with me 18, 19, 20. It's been 3 years Katie's been with me. And at the point where I promoted her to management, she took over all of operations. I mean, she's better than me when it comes to management, because she's just like such a leader. You know, someone messed up on a Peauxboy, I'm like, you're out of here. You don't care. And she's like, no, let's train them a little better. You know, like, she's that person that's just so patient. And because of her, with the staffing issues that are relevant nowadays, we've been able to maintain our same staff for 3 years. Wow. So when COVID hit, we closed for a month because we just didn't know the facts about it. And I had older people on my staff. I didn't want to jeopardize their life, you know? So we closed, and they had all gotten on unemployment. Well, it's very hard to get someone off of unemployment and get back to work, right? Yeah. Like, we're seeing this in the American economy.
Absolutely.
My entire staff came back.
Yeah. I'm sorry I interrupted you. I was just saying, absolutely. People don't want to come back to work once they got out. It's like, oh gosh, I'd rather stay at home.
Yeah, stay at home and make the check. But my entire staff came back. And I can't say it's just because of me, because it's definitely Katie's doing. You know, they are in support of both of us. And so we have a family for our restaurant. And that's hard to come by. We don't have high turnover. I believe it has a lot to do with like the way that you treat the people that work for you. I treat them like they are personally invested in the business. For instance, I have ferns in my business, and those things are the hardest plants to keep alive. And I don't have a green thumb, so like, don't put me in charge of keeping the ferns alive, okay? Well, yeah. I have one girl that's a manager, and I'm like, hey, your job is just the ferns. Like, keep these bad boys alive. And she takes a lot of pride now in keeping the ferns alive. And so every time I come in and people compliment the ferns, because they do, because they're beautiful, I'm like, it's not me, it's Bree, you know? It's like, I'm not keeping anything alive, but Bree sure is. And so I like to give everyone some piece of ownership in the business, because if it's not for them, I wouldn't be in business, you know? And that's just the reality of it. It's too much for one person. And I felt that very early on. If I would have had to sustain the everyday 24/7 work that I was doing, it's just not sustainable. It's right. You'll burn out, you'll become resentful. And the last thing you want to do when you're in business is resent the business, because the clients will feel that.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Yeah. So the hurricane hit last year, August 27th, wiped us out. I remember watching a meteorologist that was here in town as he was riding around during the storm. And I knew I wasn't going to have a business to come home to. I was surprised I had a place to stay, because many people lost their homes living in tents. It was a disaster, truly. And I'm even thinking about it brings me back, and it's a heavy thing to witness. So I had a friend who had come back into town early. They passed by my business. It was standing when the business next to it, the whole entire roof was collapsed onto the business. So it's like, okay, it's standing. We got something to work with. Well, when I went home, I realized we have nothing to work with. It's swampland in there. Like, the roof was completely destroyed. It was water damage. I mean, it was bad. So I said, I can't be in here. I can't see the place that I put my heart and soul into for years like this. Like, I remembered walking in on a day, it was like a Friday, and I was like, lines would be out the door right now. And it's, the energy in here is just not good. And
Right.
I mean, it brings tears to my eyes now, you know, it's like you put your life into something and it's so quickly just gone.
Yeah.
So I knew I had to do something to lift my spirits because I don't like to stay down. And so a friend of mine was cooking on a barbecue pit some food from a restaurant that was going to go bad if they hadn't used it. And he was feeding the community free food. So I said, let me help you. I'm coming. So I came and they're like, well, what do you offer? And I'm just like, how much chicken do you have on the grill? We have 300 people lined up. We need this much chicken, you know? So like I went into manager mode, which was super therapeutic, right? You know, it's like, I like to do what I'm best at. So I went into manager mode and I'm like, what do we do with these utensils? We need sanitation. We need I call my friend in sanitation and he's like, I'm coming, you know, I'm gonna come help y'all out. So we ended up doing this project for quite a while, a couple months, because there was nowhere to eat and people wanted to fix their homes. And these are people who have the money to spend. So they would put a tip jar out and these people would pay for their food and we'd use that to buy more food. Then it became this huge operation where Oasis Foods was donating truckloads each day for the operation. We fed 4,000 people a day towards the tail end of it. Yeah, it was people were lining up. It was cars down the roads, wrapped around blocks to get food because there genuinely was nothing to eat. And that was cool. I helped him set up a nonprofit. It was Help SWLA, disaster relief. And yeah, that was just one of the coolest projects I helped spearhead in my life. And I knew then that like that was part of my purpose. And I happened to just like fall into it. And that's usually how it happens, right? Like the things you're meant to do, you don't really get to plan or pick. You just like get dropped into it and you're just like, put the chicken on the grill. You know, like, get it done. And so it was super cool. I remember standing in line feeding, like serving the people, and I'm like, you know, cracking jokes, and I'm trying to like lighten the mood because these people are down, their homes are destroyed, and I'm just like, we got you, yeah. And the girl next to me goes, you must be in marketing. Just like, not at all.
Yeah, not a chance, no way. Well,
right.
Well, tell me this: how long did it take to kind of rebuild and get the business back in order so you could open back up?
Yeah, so that business on the main road that I had is still closed. The building is still not repaired because I was renting and they had multiple properties that were completely devastated. So it just wasn't, and it's no fault of their own. Like they just, the insurance is an issue out here for a lot of people. There are people who still aren't even in their homes because insurance is just, it's difficult to get paid. And so I was sitting there. I told my staff I'd come in with a chainsaw, some gloves, because my manager decided to stay. The manager I love deeply, right? Like the lady that like, she's my ride or die forever person. She decides to stay for the hurricane in her mobile home. So I'm cussing her out. I'm like, get out of there. I will buy you an Airbnb. Come meet me now. And she's like, oh, we're good. It's fine. She's a country girl. You know, she ain't worried about nothing. And ended up reaching out to her, getting in touch with her after the hurricane because I thought she was gone. I remember just feeling like, oh, this is the last time I'm gonna hear from her. And so we finally got in touch. She's like, Paige, a tree fell through the house. I thought I was gone. Like I thought it was gonna be my last day. And I was like, okay, you're alive. What do I need to do? So she's like, I need a chainsaw to get this tree out. I need this, like roads are bad. So I'm driving to her home in the country with the chainsaw, the gloves, all the things that she asked from Mississippi. So I can't even pass certain areas. There's 18-wheelers falling over. I mean, there was some city officials just flagging me down to go around an 18-wheeler on her road. So we get there, hug her, and I'm just like, okay, guys, and the whole staff was there at this point because, we all family. So I said, we'll be out of work for 6 months. So you guys need to get up on some cleanup crews if you need money. Like y'all need to figure this out because 6 months at least we'll be out. We'll figure it out after that. So I paid her through the whole situation because I did not want her going to find another job. Because at that point I knew that she was super valuable, and if she went somewhere else, they would compete with me with getting her back,
Mm-hmm.
So I said, absolutely not. I'm paying for you. You stay home, take care of your house, do what you got to do. Well, the 6 months mark was rolling around, and I was like, if I don't get open, I'll go broke. I got to find something. I got to figure this out. And I knew that the location we were at was not opening. So I called a friend of mine who runs downtown properties here in Lake Charles. And I was like, is there anything available? And she was like, as a matter of fact, this restaurant fully outfitted is not coming back. It's fixed. Do you want it? And so I go in and it's perfect. I wasn't going to have to spend a big investment to get in there. I said, it doesn't have a drive-through. It doesn't have parking, but it'll at least pay for Katie to live, and then my staff will be taken care of. Everyone will have jobs. I'll be all right, like with just a little bit of profit until we can figure out this other location. Well, we ended up opening and doing better than I've ever done.
Wow.
In business here in Lake Charles. Yeah. Like the city came, like the people in the city just are so supportive. I didn't realize the fan base we had with the restaurant until we opened the doors, and we're almost in a similar situation that we were in the very beginning of like not having space. I'm like, we need a shed. Where are we going to put it? Like, what are we going to do if we keep growing like this? And so as hard as it's also been equally or more rewarding because now there's so much more purpose and passion behind the service. Because it's not just about having a business to make money with, it's now about giving your community somewhere to go that feels familiar. And I always say when people walk into the restaurant, it's huge for my staff. We say, welcome to Buffi's. And I'm talking like, it's like on repeat, like anyone coming through the door, it's all of us. Welcome to Buffi's, welcome to Buffi's. And I say now it's just like saying welcome home. It feels like we're saying welcome home. And when I opened the doors, this older lady had come in and she was sitting there. She was like, baby, Buffi's is open and we know it's going to be okay here.
That's awesome. That's awesome. That's a great story. And goodness gracious, you've had a lot of different things to get through between hurricanes and COVID and, and just last week, Hurricane Ida, which didn't come right through you, but, wasn't too far down the road. And you told me you had gone up and tried to help those folks as well this past week. So thank you for all that you do and have done to help your community as well as other communities in the face of disaster. Hey, you mentioned early on that you did a couple of things differently after you took over the store or the business, and you mentioned business model changes and marketing. So I'd love to hear kind of what is. Well, let's start with marketing. What is kind of your thing, or what has really worked well for you that maybe some of our other listeners in other states might be able to jump on board?
Yeah, sure. Marketing. I love marketing. I get super excited talking about it because it's just one of my passions, one of my many. Okay. So what I did first of all was a really good photo shoot. I got some good lighting and I made those sandwiches. One year I was like really dedicated to figuring out marketing for restaurants. I was working with my mom's business, which is a huge multi-million-dollar business. And I didn't want to disappoint her when it came to like pictures and such. So like I did a deep dive study into like how McDonald's does it and how all these other places do it. So I positioned the sandwiches in such a way where you saw the most important ingredients, right? Like you saw the meats, the cheeses, and the juice. Like, and that was the main focal point of the pictures. And so when you're taking pictures for your business, you want to just like really focus on the essential elements of like what the eye will see. Like as soon as that picture, they scroll past it, how can I catch their eye? So it's colors, it's moisture, it's steam, all of those things. And even if I was pulling the meats out of the po' boys so you could see them in the picture, like that, they'll know, oh, there's roast beef in there. Oh, that's a meatball. Oh, I was really into the pictures. I did these pictures. I focus heavily on them. So that was one of the first investments I took with marketing. Also, story brand marketing is the only way to go, in my opinion, for any kind of business. So what I have done that seems to be working well is when you have a business, you want to create raving fans. And this is why, because I moved in, I had a hole in the wall spot. We moved to a main street, and then we moved to another hole in the wall. And the people follow you whenever you create a connection with them through your story. So it's letting the people know who you are or who your brand is. So for me, what's worked is like, hey, I did this entrepreneurial thing online. Like, I'm an entrepreneur and I'm in here working for 3 months straight. It's hard, but hey, here's my partner in business. And I let people know as we grew what was happening so that they were invested in my growth. So they felt like a personal attachment to watching me succeed. And as they came to do business with me, they became the hero in the story, right? They're the reason I'm successful, because if it wasn't for them, I would have nothing. And I tell them that all the time. Like, if it's not for you, what do I have? Like, it's my team and it's the customers. And, me, I'm just here as the motorboat, like I'm here as the motor on the boat, right? Like, just keeping everything going. And so I really believe that story brand is the key. So when you're talking about your business or any business in general, like, what sets you apart? And then you just keep talking about that. And when you're writing, you make it concise. You talk about the feelings. I think that America has gotten really good about suppressing feelings and just like, really disassociating from the reality of our humanness, which is the feeling. So whenever I'm doing any type of marketing, I always like to associate it with some sort of feeling. Like, you will feel satisfied. Oh, this is an experience. You come to escape. I did this one thing once, and sometimes now it's just gotten pretty natural whenever I'm just like posting, or when I have like an inspiration of something I want to write. Because it has to be real as well. Like, it can't be something you've just like hired someone to construct. Like, it should be something that does come from the heart. And you can hire someone to relay that message, but it needs to be something true to you. And I'm sitting there after we've opened, and I'm like, golly, this lady just said this to me. Like, everybody's they're feeling like they're home again. So I write that, and it became like this viral post that I did. It was about, when we say welcome to Buffi's, what it really sounds like is welcome home. And the city it was like hundreds and hundreds of shares, and I just couldn't believe it. But it's because of that one feeling of welcome home. And so that's the key in marketing, is finding out what your customer is feeling, and then just tapping into that constantly, and just like letting it be part of their story, letting your brand be part of who they are. And also, obviously, quality in everything, quality and value. So with the business model, as much as I've changed, I never once changed the quality of the food. So it's super expensive right now. I'm sure you've heard, like, especially for restaurants. Food is just outrageous in price, doubled in price or more. And I'm not changing the food. I'm not changing the quality. I feel that if we're forced to raise prices, people will understand and they'll want it because they're willing to pay for quality, rather than me cutting back and using something cheaper, which that's not the brand. Like, that's not who we are. If we're going to serve you something, it's going to be something you can feel good about. So obviously keeping quality is the key. Another thing I changed when it came to marketing was you get to pick a brand voice whenever you're marketing. So a brand voice is kind of like the personality of your business. So you know that for me, like your friends know you. So there's certain things that they can expect from you when they meet you, right? Like you're not always going to have perfect days where you're high energy, but they can pretty much expect integrity. Like for me, my friends can expect to feel inspired or like to have a conversation about something we're grateful for and we're excited about. So there's a certain energy that everyone has and you can't duplicate it, right? Like I have been inspired by people, but I can't duplicate their energy. I can only bring Paige energy to the conversation.
Right.
So you get to choose what energy your business brings and then like stick to that 110%. So Buffy's, I chose early on when it came to like branding and marketing that Buffy's was going to have a lot of Paige energy. Like we're going to be about the team, about the people, about the quality, about the energy, about the experience, inspiration. Like that is where the secret sauce is for our brand and what I feel that people really resonate and connect to. So like just choosing your brand voice, so important. And adaptability. And also like being successful looks like meekness as well, right? Mm-hmm. Like I think there's a quality or something honorable about being meek. So no matter how successful we get, like me, my manager, my team, like we get to still be meek about it. And that looks like, so for instance, I could very easily, I just paid off my minivan, 2015 minivan. And like, I could very easily go get a new vehicle, right? Like easy, not a problem at all. You know, there's nothing wrong with getting a new vehicle. But for me, I'm just, that's good enough. You know, less bills, like it's fine. It's good. So really, I did this Dave Ramsey's program once. Well, I didn't complete it, but the book was great. And it was all about having enough and what enough looked like for you. So for me, and like that's what you get to choose with your brand as well. So when your brand is doing well, do you go out and change it in any way that makes it more appealing to on a commercial sense? And this is where I got hung up once. And I will tell you this from a failure experience. When I moved into the big location, we went super commercial. So white, it was beautiful. Don't get me wrong. A lot of inspiration from it. I loved it. But I think it lost. No, you know, I'm not going to say it lost anything. I think it changed so much so that it was almost unrecognizable to the beginning, the earlier hole in the wall brand. So when we went into this new hole in the wall at downtown Lake Charles, we decided to mix both of the brand identities. So also commercialized, beautiful design with this hole in the wall feeling where it brings the old and the new together. So knowing when you're like straying from the brand, knowing when you're making, like being able to adapt back to what the heart of the brand has been key for us, especially this new location. People are like, this is the best feeling. And I always say, yeah, we wanted to mix history with new and like bring it all together after what we've experienced. Yeah. So that has been huge.
Yeah, you don't want to stray from the brand itself and to go get too far out of bounds. And if you do, your customers will let you know probably. They'll be like, wait, what is this?
For sure. And they loved it. Like, don't get me wrong. We transitioned and they loved it, but it was still just a little different for most people who were the beginning customers. You know, they were like, right. Oh, well, what's happening? You know, yeah. and everyone adapted. But I think that there was something special we did when we came back to our roots. Yeah. And being rooted, even as like a human being, like staying rooted in your truth, because there's no other Jeff, right?
Yep.
There's no other Paige. There's no other you. Staying rooted in those truths. And I found that connecting that with the story brand. So being able to tell Jeff's story, being able to tell Paige's story, Buffi's story, being really, because people get real, I've noticed this, like, even when you're talking to someone, Jeff, it's like they're not there sometimes, it's like we go through so much stress in our lives, just in general, that we tend to like get so stressed, even in conversations, that we're just like thinking about other things. And like, it's like, oh, ADD or whatever, and the reality is that we just lose touch with what's happening now,
Right.
And so I have found the key to really feeling successful no matter what is being grounded in what is happening now and who you are and the role you play in it.
Well, I think that's super good advice, super great advice, actually, for all of our listeners, because marketing is a big part of growing your business and sustaining your business, number one, but growing it, number two, because there's always competition. There's always somebody with the new concept that comes out down the road, and we've got to stay in front of our customers. We've got to you've got to connect in some form or fashion. And it seems to me, and I'm a marketeer as well, but it seems to me that that's the hardest part, is kind of figuring all that out, who you are, what your voice is, what your brand is, and then being able to communicate that and connect it with your customers so that, they become those raving fans that you mentioned. So thank you for that advice. And I'm sure all our listeners will appreciate your input there. It gives them all something to think about. I was talking with another business earlier, and their whole brand, they were a 70-year-old restaurant. So for them, it was nostalgia. The whole feel and look of the place was all, takes you back in time kind of thing. And that's what they were all about. And so they were trying to live true to that and not sway from it or get too far off track. So good advice. And thank you for sharing that. Speaking of, well, you mentioned, let me backtrack just a little bit. You mentioned food cost and, being astronomical, 2 or 3 times what it was. Just to clarify, you haven't made price changes at this point. Is that accurate?
I have made price changes. I
Okay.
did.
Okay.
Yes, to reflect that.
Yeah. And that is what most restaurateurs or restaurant owners are doing, because you got to keep it at or near that 30%, margin in order to operate.
For sure.
And there's just no way around it. And I think we as consumers, I'm not a restaurant owner, I just work with restaurant owners. Or I stayed at a Holiday Inn Express, so now I'm a restaurant owner. But you remember those commercials?
Yeah.
But anyway, I think we as consumers at restaurants, we understand that and have, most of us have some education. I think most people know that that's the issue. There's shortages, there's increases in costs, and most people have been accepting of those changes to pricing that we run across. The hardest thing, I think, for consumers to understand is the service levels that they may be getting. What I mean by that is that a large portion of restaurants here in this country are understaffed today, meaning you may be waiting in line for 30 minutes for a table, and you're sitting there looking at 15 tables available, and you're wondering why you're not sitting. But it's simply because we don't have either cooks in the kitchen or servers or whatever. We just don't have enough. And trying to educate consumers on understanding that the levels of service may be slightly different, not as a result of us cutting costs or anything like that. We just can't find people. So far, staffing has that been a challenge for you, or did you say you guys had been okay?
Yeah, so staffing, we're obviously hiring, you know what I mean? So if you know anyone,
yeah.
know that Yeah, staffing is an issue. It's just the reality that we're in. You know, people are on an unemployment. They don't want to get off of it. And there's just a lot of shifts and changes happening in the world right now. So, what we have done is we have 3 registers. We'll use 1 register during the rush so we don't bombard the kitchen. We still will fill up our dining room, but it slows it down. So there's just ways to adapt in that situation. And honestly, there's no cut and dry answer for what we're facing. This is really the thick of things. This is what we're going to write about in history as time moves on. This time right now is a crucial time. And I believe that a lot of the answers come through faith. And I'll say that like very proudly, everything that I've been able to accomplish has come through a spiritual connection. And just being able to say, okay, I don't have the answers. What can I do today? And, you know, and even with like the COVID scares and, you know, what if your staff gets like, what if this happens? Or what if that happens? And, you know, all of these answers that are hard to really, you want to be on the right side of history, right? Like you want to be making the proper choices. And so all of that starts with just surrender in the morning and saying, okay, I surrender to whatever the answer is. And I think that when we open ourselves up to that surrender and that faith, that's when someone comes in and gives you a piece of advice that you weren't expecting. Like I didn't set a meeting, but this person just walked into Market Basket. Like, and this is true story. This is what happened to me the other day. I was contemplating on a business decision and I'm at a Market Basket 20 minutes away from anywhere like I'd be purchasing anything, but it just happened. I'm like, I'm going to go there. And a friend of mine in business was there who gave me the exact business advice that I needed in that moment. And so I think that there's just that kind of surrender and faith and knowing that at the right time, the answers will come. And so I would encourage any business owner just to have some sort of spiritual practice to where they can get into a place of surrender every single morning so that they can make the right decisions. Being adaptable as well is important. You know, there are changes that I've made, like with like reverse fee credit card processing, like that had to happen for me to stay into business. And I suggest it for people who are comfortable with that idea and who, if they've surrendered and they feel like this is confirmation, like that wasn't, there was a point where I was like, I won't be in business unless I really start figuring out these costs. Raising prices I had to do immediately. And I feel like my customer base will support whatever needs to be done for the doors to stay open. Also, casting a wider net for your customer base has been important for me. And that looks like marketing on Facebook and Instagram, pictures, really good pictures, telling the story, and just being vulnerable in that way of like, I want to continue to serve you and we're going to do whatever it takes type of situation. I feel like people, if they know what's happening and they can understand and I'm not talking about like, woe is me, oh my gosh, I'm going to close the doors if y'all don't come visit, but like, we're willing to serve you the best every single day. And we're going to do whatever it takes through this hard times where businesses are closing. 200 businesses did not renew their business licenses in Lake Charles, Louisiana after Hurricane Laura. And we're one of them that did. And we're going to be the ones that stick around forever because of you. And we're going to make some changes. It may not be sunshine all the time, but guess what? We will come out of this better than we came in. And I think just like having that kind of like strength of spirit to say like, we're warriors, like we got this. I think people can rally behind that.
I think that is awesome and very inspirational. And I appreciate you sharing that because there are things that you can do and ways, and that's just a communication kind of point. I mean, you just kind of go out there and say, here's what we're doing, here's what we did, here's what we got to do to keep on serving you guys. And you know, you may not like it all, but you're gonna love the fact we're still here when you get in here and sit down and eat. And
yeah, and I don't like necessarily tell everyone every decision. I'm not like, oh, prices just changed. I don't
yeah,
make it a point, but I'm like, service is gonna stay the same, quality is gonna stay the same no matter what changes in this world, right? Like we don't want to draw focal attention to the issue, but we want to make our solutions the grand thing that we like. The point behind all of it is that we want to serve and we want to
right,
be here for you.
right.
And I think that when you draw attention to the right things, people get inspired to stand behind a business, because they're not doing business just with some talking head. They're doing business with your heart.
Exactly. And those are some very inspirational words. And again, I appreciate you sharing kind of your story and your experience and all the different challenges and things that you guys have been through, which is different from, many people's experiences. They've not had to go through hurricanes and, buildings being demolished and to live through that. And I guess, geographically, those things are going to come to places where they come, but, we all face disasters in our lives and our businesses, and we have to overcome. And Paige, you're a shining example of overcoming challenges and obstacles, and still having the spirit to be able to want to serve and want to deliver, to your guests and your community. And I'm sure everyone's thankful for being there, or for you being there for them. So thank you very much from everyone.
Thank you.
Any parting words of wisdom or anything that I missed that you'd like to share before we wrap this thing up today?
Anything I'd like to share before we wrap this thing up? Let's see
I
here.
know I kind of put you on the spot with that, because you just did really give a great finale a minute ago, and I should have just went with that. But
no, it's good. I actually will share. It's something did just come to me. You said something about the spirit. So inspiration is all about being in spirit, right? And so if there's no other way to live, the best way is inspired, passionate. And it's about when you have a business, if you make it about the bottom line, if you make it about profits, when it's time to adapt, it'll be very hard too, right? Like if anything changes and profits don't show up the way they used to, it's very hard to adapt. So I have learned that the best way to do business is to stay in spirit, stay inspired, and stand behind values and a morality of sorts, so that you're not shifting to make a profit. Like you're more so shifting to stay in spirit and inspired by what your purpose is. Because the reality is I'm not a chef. Like, don't put me in the kitchen and expect me to whip up something really great. Like that's what I got, but like other people for. What you're good for is what you're good at, right? And so I am really good about inspiration. I am really good about the story. So knowing yourself well enough to know where you stand and how to move forward and how to march when you have to march, how to get in the marsh when you have to get in the marsh, like knowing what the dirty work looks like for your person, not for everyone else. Because if I was trying to chase, like my mom is this super successful entrepreneur who was dirt poor with 3 kids, dropped off in Louisiana and didn't know what to do. And she started selling shrimp on the side of the road just to make a little bit of money to feed them. I mean, they were standing outside of bars selling cookies to drunk people to make money to eat the next day. It was tough for them, my sisters and my mom. And if I was to try to follow in her footsteps and be behind, like try to be Kathy, I would be overshadowed and so upset because I could never measure up in the way that she has done her life. But guess what? There's no other Kathy and there's no other Paige. So I just had to realize what I'm good at and who I really am. And I think that if every person can figure out who they really are, they can find a way to stay inspired in that. And that will drive any business, no matter if I'm in the kitchen or in a restaurant, or an artist, because I paint as well, or marketing, or whatever, in consulting, because that's what I do as well. And so it's not about being an identity for a business, but being in your identity to where you can go into any business and bring that that Jeff,
I
So
love
that,
it. I love it.
yeah.
Absolutely. Yes, ma'am. You
Yeah.
are very inspiring, and you're an author too. I think you forgot to say that.
Right. It's like I'm multi-passionate. I always say I'm like, whatever I want to be today, that's who I am. Like if you're trying to pin Paige down, like just stop trying, because it's whatever works for me. And I think, a lot of people used to say like, you gotta choose. And I'd be like, that is so confining. And I just could not deal with it. And then I finally I realized they don't even know what they're doing. I get to do what I want to do and not have to listen to everyone else try to tell me how to be me.
Exactly. Great advice, and very inspirational. And I'm sure our people are feeling it and just boiling with energy now. And our listeners are ready to charge out to the world and deliver whatever it is that they deliver to the best of their ability. And I want to thank you for taking time to be on our show with us and for sharing your experiences and your energy and your words of advice. So thank you very much, Miss Paige.
Thank you. I appreciate you so much.
Well, we're so thankful to have you. And again, it's Buffi's Peauxboys and Lake Charles, Louisiana. And if you're anywhere near the area, be sure to get over there and visit her team. And make sure you say hey to Katie as well. And don't forget Bree, who keeps the ferns alive. See what I'm making notes of over here?
Yes, I love it.
Yeah, exactly. So when you see those ferns, go find Bree. She's the woman.
It's Bree. It's all Bree.
It's all Bree. But please go out and visit. If you hadn't been over in a while, go back to see her. And again, thank you for being on our show today, Paige. Again, for our listeners, thank you for being here as well. I'm Jeff Johnson, your host of the Local Leaders Podcast. We appreciate you sharing your time with us, and we look forward to seeing you on our next episode. Thank you.